I think the next big hitter that you would like to dig into, given your kind of relationship there, is Martin Casado, right? The A16 VC who has gotten deep into the kind of political intrigue, was probably the biggest anti-California legislation proponent, SB 1047. And I think specifically had an insight in what they look for in companies that are taking advantage of this new generation of models. So what was your take on Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I think he had this line, it's just like, well, actually, I'll flag two things. One, a little broader. It was sort of like, what's investable in AI? Like, who has the moat? And his take was sort of, we don't know. And so we're going to invest in everything. And I, joked that was my sense of the Andreessen Horowitz approach to investing, which is just like, let's cover it all. And like, because you don't know what's going to be sort of the future. So I thought that was I mean, he didn't really like push back on my characterization. More specifically, I thought he did have I thought he was great overall. And I even that part, they might be right. Just like index AI is the right approach. But he sort of made the point that he thinks in sort of business applications, there's sort of a strong chance that what's going to differentiate companies is the same stuff that it differentiated them in the software or the SaaS era. It's just like, know your customer, know how to sell to them, have both sides of the marketplace, like have great integrations in the space. It's not necessarily like have the best model, have the best coders in, I don't know what call center APIs. Like if you're going to build the next generation of software company, it might not be you have sort of the hardest core engineers. It's that you sort of know call centers, you know what their customers want, you know how to sell to them, you have a strategy, you start to build integrations. I don't know. What do you guys think about that idea? I mean, it's sort of a core persistent question in Silicon Valley, which is like, how much do you need a technological edge, or can you just be a great sort of sales product company?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any company has had like a sustainable software edge for the long term. It's like my odd take on Silicon Valley. This is something I was arguing with a lot of VCs with about a year ago when we were fundraising, where they're like, oh, do you guys have like the best generative AI for voice games? And I was like, no, like obviously open AI and Anthropic have the best generative AI. And I just think similarly to, we just forget our history so quickly. Like, you didn't have to have the best cloud software to build a cloud-based business. You didn't have to have the best, database to build a business with databases. You didn't have to have the best operating system to build an applications business on Windows or Mac or whatever. I mean, there's so many layers of technology that end up being commoditized, and there's a few big winners, and then folks who are building the applications on top often end up still being massive successes, but they're not driving these technological advantages. And these technological advantages often end up being capital and scale and kind of economies of scale advantages, which is, I think, where we're seeing the OpenAIs and the Anthropics just kind of running away from everyone. Is there's this like winner take all cycle of having the best model means you get all these customers, means you get all this VC money, which means you get to pour it all into GPUs, which means you get the next generation best model. And after two turns of that wheel, you're gone. No one can ever catch you, basically.
Well, that's the hope, though. Yeah. We've talked about open source models have been surprisingly able to catch up. And so,
Facebook definitely is like trying to be the third person in that game, basically, right? With Llama,
the Android.
Martin also mentioned, which I thought was interesting, that he sees opportunity for small models, right? And I think we've seen this a lot in the last year, that there are companies who are able to compete by having small but very specifically focused vertical models, right? Like music generation or image generation or video generation. Like it does seem that that's a more fertile ground for startups to train models in those creative fields, maybe. And I don't know, maybe we'll see that all gets kind of eaten up by OpenAI and Anthropic as well. But so far right now, it does seem there's a lot of startups succeeding by training these smaller creative models.
And presumably a theme we've talked about on this podcast, models that are optimized for the cost. It's like if you're focused on video or voice and you're doing it every day, you're like, oh, it's not just about getting the best performance so we can show off. It's like doing it in a way that is sustainable and people can build businesses on top of, or you can build a business on top of.